Good morning and welcome to the WREA educational webinar series. We're doing a little bit of a unique one here on Saturday. It's the pre-retirement seminar. We thank you for joining us. My name is John Green with Association Member Benefits Advisors. I will share with you a little bit more about myself and about the organization that partners with WREA, the Wisconsin Retired Educator Association, to make sure that you understand how we work together. And we help sponsor this webinar this morning. As we have people joining us, just a couple of quick housekeeping details before I turn this over to our premier co-host speaker today. We are recording this session. We record all of our webinar sessions and we put them out on the WREA.net website, WREA.net, and that way you can refer to those webinars in the future. We are also going to send a PDF copy of these slides to everyone who has registered on the webinar. So if you're registered and you're joined us, there's no need to send us anything else. We've already have your email. We can send you a copy afterwards. If you are joining someone who has registered, and there are 2 or 3 of you watching from the same household and you'd like your own personal set, drop that email and just add like a personal copy of the website or the slides into the Q&A section up there, and we'll be able to send those out when we send everybody the slides at the end of the presentation today. You will also notice the QR code down here at the bottom. I'm going to want you to have your smartphone handy, and we'll show you, just like we do in restaurants today, how you can get some more information about WREA, about membership, about some of the benefits that come along with our WREA membership. We'll show you how to get that as well. And then, as I mentioned, the Q&A section. We have experts on here. Annalise and MJ will be monitoring the Q&A section. If you've got a specific question you'd like to ask, feel free to drop that into the Q&A. If it's something that pertains to your specific situation, we'll probably just respond back to you on the Q&A chat feature. If it's something that we think the whole group can benefit from and we know we're not going to cover it, we'll stop and we'll address that question there, because we've got a lot of questions that have come in beforehand, and we've also got several things in the slides that we have as well. But before we get started, I do want to just kind of find out who we have on the call today. So I'm going to launch a quick poll and just kind of let us know what your retirement plans are. This will help us craft our conversation today. This is totally anonymous. Your administrators won't know that you're getting ready to retire this year or 1 or 2 years, 3 years plus out there. So just let us know who's out there. This will help us kind of craft our discussion as we go through this conversation today. So we've got a really good group on the line today, and we'll make sure that everybody jumps in here. We'll just give it about 3 or 4 more seconds to make sure that everyone gets a chance to jump in. And if you're joining us just on your smartphone or on a tablet, we've had several people that have told us they're driving, they're going to be traveling. Hopefully you're doing it safely. Don't participate in the poll, just listen, and we'll make sure that we get you all the stuff that you need after the fact there. So, all right, I'm going to close this poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, share the results here. We've got a good spread across the board. We've got about a quarter of the group that are going to retire at the end of this school year, and I applaud you. Congratulations, and thank you for what you've done. The rest of you are looking out next couple of years and 3+ years or more, which I think this is great, because now's the time to prepare. One thing that we always find and that we hate to hear is that when a retiree comes to us and says, I wish I would have known, and sometimes it's too late to make a decision, or they had to make a decision with their retirement before they anticipated the need to do so. So again, that's why we have these conversations, and that's what WREA does on your behalf, to make sure that you understand these things early. Okay, so I want to do this. I want to introduce to you your host and our super speaker today, Diane Wilczynski. She's the executive director of the Wisconsin Retired Educators Association. She's been with WREA since April of 2016. Not only is she the executive director, she is a lobbyist that supports you and your pensions, and she'll talk about that as well. But she's one of you for 4 decades. She was I think it was a German teacher. Is that what you told me, Diane? A German teacher and administrator in the Sheboygan Area School District. And so she comes over with a heart and a passion for active educators as well as retirees. Very well credentialed, active, involved in her community. She's got a son who's a teacher, a grandmother to 2 young boys, and she spends a lot of her time out on Green Lake whenever the weather warms up, I would assume, hopefully, and out there. So Diane, I appreciate you joining us today. and I'm going to drive the slides, but Diane is going to talk the conversation. And again, if you've got questions, drop them in the Q&A, and we can roll right on there. So good morning, Diane. How are you today?
I'm good, John. How are you?
Oh, we're doing well down here. We're thawing out in Texas, but for you, it's probably just another day up there. So
well, it is, but it's getting warmer. It's going to be in the 30s today, so that's a heat wave actually
heat
for us.
wave. All right.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this pre-retirement seminar. And as John said, I do work for the Wisconsin Retired Educators Association. And just a little bit about us: we are a nonpartisan association. We do lobby, but we do not endorse candidates. And our signature goal is to protect the pension and to make sure that nothing comes up to threaten the integrity of that pension. We also support public education and a lot through our foundation, which we do a challenge award for innovative programs in the school districts. And we also have a lot of volunteers. Our members volunteer a lot, and they are in the schools also. So we support what you're doing in the schools, and I want to thank you for what you are doing as a teacher. As John said, my son is a first-year teacher now and going through. He's had a little bit of a rough time, but being a first-year teacher, I'm sure all of you remember way back when that happened. So again, welcome. I'm also going to tell you, I'm going to give you a kind of a high view overview of the Wisconsin retirement system, which we call WRS. If you have specific questions to your own situation, either, we'll respond outside of this, or I'll refer you to the agency that could answer those questions. So the Wisconsin retirement system is made up of public employees of over 663,000 participants. It is teachers, it is administrators, it is public employee, it is like city workers, county workers, firemen, policemen. Legislators are also in the system. So it is not just teachers, it's a wide variety of people that are in there. The one thing that we are very proud of is that it is over 105% funded. And actually, I heard as about 2 days ago, that number has gone up to 106% funded, which means that they have the money to pay out the benefits in years to come. As you're going to hear, other states do not have that they are underfunded and are struggling to pay out benefits. And they pay out over $6 billion in benefits annually. So it's a very strong program. It continues to be strong because the money is invested very wisely. Okay. All right. The first part of April, you will get what's called an annual statement of benefits. Now, when you get that statement of benefits, I suggest that you read it very carefully. There are several sections in there that you really need to pay attention to. And two of them that are critical are sections 1 and 2, because those two sections talk about your earnings and your service. You need to verify that the amount of money you've made is correct and that your years of service is correct. And here's the reason why. When you get ready to retire, ETF, which is the Employee Trust Fund, and that is the one that distributes the money, they will go from whatever your last statement of benefits says. If it's wrong, you may get the wrong amount in your annuity. That's what they have to go from. So verify what's on that information. If you think there's an error, check with your HR department or whoever does that at your district and have them go through that to make sure that that is correct. Now, chances are it's not going to be incorrect, but there's always that possibility that it might. So verify that. If you haven't looked at that, if you can't find your one from last year, you might want to contact ETF. I'm not sure if they can send you one, but you will be getting a new one come the first part of April. Okay. All right. One of the reasons also that our system is so strong is that the employee participates in it, the employer participates in it. So you pay a part of your paycheck every time you get paid. That's 6.8%, and this just went up January 1, and your employer also does, and the employers pay their bills. This is part of the reason that some of the states are in trouble, because employers have not been consistent in paying those amounts. This amount is reviewed annually. Now, the percentage is a little different for the employer part. If you're not an educator, it is usually higher, but the employee portion pretty much stays the same. Now, in your account, you get interest, is accumulated also in addition to the contributions you make. Okay. All right. So the question comes up and says, well, can I make, additional contributions to my account? Yes, you can, because as an active educator, you have an account at ETF with your name on it. All of your monthly contributions or paycheck contributions, depending on how you're paid, goes into that account. If you want to say, like, maybe I want to do $100 a month additional, that'll go into an account. It's a separate account from your retirement account, but then when you get ready to retire, it's all combined. Now, there's a kind of a confusion that people sometimes have. A lot of school districts will offer what's called like a tax sheltered annuity, which is really like a 403B. And a lot of them may be with the WREA trust. That is not part of your retirement pension. That is totally separate. And that will come when you reach a certain age. You'll get a required minimum distribution every year. It typically comes in December, somewhere around there. That'll come directly to you. It does not contribute or is not figured in on your pension. So keep in mind that is an additional source of revenue, so to speak, that when you contribute now as an employee, it is not taxed. When you start drawing it out, it is taxed. Okay, so it's a benefit to you when you're working now. All right, so if you want to, let's say, call a separation benefit, if you're looking at retirement, the minimum age of retirement for teachers is 55. For like law enforcement and firefighters, it's age 50. But be careful. If you start drawing your pension out at 55, you're going to take a penalty, because the normal age and years of service is 57 and 30 years. If you're 57 and have at least 30 years of teaching or of experience of some sort, you will not have a penalty. Anything less than that, you will have a penalty. And you will be paying federal and state tax penalties, and that could be up to 20%, which is a huge amount taken out of your account. Advice would be is if you leave before 57 or before 30 years, for whatever reason, leave your money in your account, because it'll continue to grow with interest. And then when you get to be retirement age, you can then take out your, start taking out your benefits. Now, if you leave early, also get only your part of the account. You do not get your employer account. If you leave it until you're ready to retire, you get both, your portion and your employer portion. So word to the wise, leave it in there, don't touch it, or wait until you're 57 and have 30 years in, or however you want to work that. Now, as what we call an active employee, that's somebody who is covered under the WRS. So this is people who are currently working, that you have a death benefit. So if you should die while you're still working as a teacher, your money that's in your account will go to your beneficiaries. And this is both the employer and employee portion, which brings me back to the statement of benefits. The other portion that is critical that you check is Section 5, which is identifying who your beneficiaries are. There is a list that ETF has to follow, and we'll get into that in a little bit, of who your beneficiaries are. If you do not have a beneficiary assigned, ETF will then list it as a state, because they have to go by the law as to what they do. Make sure your beneficiary is up to date. I always tell this story because I've heard this, and I think it's a really good story from someone who was working at ETF years ago. Is there was a husband and wife, were both teachers, got divorced. The wife, the woman remarried, and then her new husband was also an educator. They continued working until retirement, and then decided to retire. After they retired, the woman passed away. And so her husband at that time then went to ETF and said, well, how much do I get, for my wife's pension? The answer that he got was nothing, because she forgot to change the beneficiary. And so her ex-husband got the rest of her account. So it is critical that you have that up to date, and you can change it as many times as you want. There's a form on the ETF website that you can go to, that you can fill out actually yearly if you want. I wouldn't advise that, but you could as many times as you want. And then when you retire, that's on file. And then whatever the last one is who that money would go to upon your death. The other thing to let you know here is you can never outlive your benefits. It doesn't matter if you live to be 110, you will get an annuity payment every month. So that is another strength of our program, which is really called a defined benefit, but it's really kind of a hybrid type of a pension. But that is another strength to it, is you cannot outlive it, which makes it very different from a defined contribution, because that you can outlive your money if you're not a wise investor and, you know, money manager. Okay. There's also death benefits as an inactive person. You become inactive when, let's say you retire on June 5th and you're due for your first payment July 1. If you should die between July 5th and between June 5th and before July 1, I'll get my dates right here sooner or later, you are in inactive status. That means that the death benefit is only your portion of it that goes to your beneficiaries. So I kind of make light of this, but to put it in a little perspective, don't plan to die between when you retire and when you're planning to get your first check. You know, at least get that far, you know, and so that your beneficiaries have something there. But there is that benefit there for you when, you know, when you retire to pay out. Okay.
Diane, what happens if someone leaves service, say at 55, but they wait until 57 to start drawing their pension?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean there's a 2-year gap they're inactive, or is that still considered they're active during that time?
Well, if they leave but don't officially retire,
okay,
then it becomes the 57. But if they retire at 55, then there is that gap. Yeah.
okay.
Then they are inactive. Yeah. Okay. So here again, I talk about the beneficiaries. They go according to whichever is the most recent one on file. So make sure that the most recent one is valid. Now, here's the important thing too, is ETF cannot pay according to what's in your will. So you might have beneficiaries that are different in your will from what is on file with ETF. They have to go with what they have on file. They do not pay attention, you know, who you list as your beneficiaries in your will. They have to go on what's in file. That's by law. So make sure that form is accurate. Okay. Here's the list. If there is no beneficiary designated, they will go this way. You know, surviving spouse or domestic partner, children, grandchildren, parents, brothers and sisters, and estate. And what I've heard is most times if there's nothing, they have to go this way, but they will list at least, you know, if there's nobody to ask, they'll put estate. But by law, this is how they have to go through if these people are all still living. If they've all passed away, then obviously it jumps to the estate right away. And you can have, the beneficiary does not have to be a person. It can be a school district if you want to donate to. It can be a nonprofit. It can be more than one person. You can put pretty much, I mean, whoever you want, except for the domestic partner. There are some regulations around that. Also, the thing of it is if you have grandchildren, and if you have put grandchildren's names as your beneficiaries, make sure it's up to date. That so that if you have had a grandchild that's just come into this world just recently, don't forget to put them on, so that you don't shortchange a grandchild that just didn't think of it, but go back and double check to make sure you've got all those on. Okay. All right. When you get ready to retire, and let me just jump a little bit before I go into this. When you get ready to retire, and I saw that like 24% of you are going to be retiring soon, 6 months before you plan to retire, contact ETF, ask for your retirement packet. They will send you all kinds of information and the forms you need, everything. Now, that does not commit you to retiring. If you say you're planning on retiring this June, once you get the packet and you think about it, you might decide you don't want to retire. You don't have to. You might want to work 2 more years. Then in 2 years, request another packet. The packet gives you the information to start planning for what you need. It'll have all the options in there that you can go from, all kinds of information that you will need. So the key is really 6 months prior to when you're going to plan on retiring. So when you do plan on retiring, ETF will figure your pension 2 ways, either with the formula benefit or the money purchase benefit. Whichever one comes out higher, you will get that amount. Now, if you don't have a lot in that account, like if you only have like maybe $300-400 in that account, you can take the lump sum, because that's not, if your monthly benefit is going to be low, you don't have a lot of money in the account, then you could come under the lump sum availability. But if you've been working for a number of years, then they will either look at the formula or money purchase. And like I said, you always get the higher of the two. Okay. So the formula calculation is based on your monthly final average earnings, which is really the 3-year average. And then there's some factors that come in. There's, I think, a problem with Zoom, so I'm going to kind of go in and out with my video if that's all right. I don't like the flickering. So anyway, so they will figure that with your 3 highest years. They will also look at your number of years of service. Now, your 3 highest years typically are your last 3 years. Don't always have to be the last 3 years. It's your 3 highest years, wherever that comes in. And so then they figure in some factors. Now here, the age reduction factor comes in. So if you're not 57 and don't have 30 years in, that's where this age reduction factor comes in. And there is, when you go to the ETF website, they have a lot of resources. And there is a booklet on there that talks about calculating your benefit that has the chart of what that reduction would be depending on what your age is when you retire and the number of years of service. And then they figure out what that, with all those adjustments, what those will be. So you can see with this formula calculation, this example would pay out $2,367.39 per month in your annuity. Okay, let's go to the next one. Keep that number in mind. The money purchase calculation is based on all the amount of money in your account. So they look at what you've got in there on your retirement date. There's a calculation figure that they do based on your age, and then they tell you what your monthly amount is going to be. Now, here they have no age reduction factor, but look at the amount that you will get, $1,768.72. Go to the next one. You can see there's quite a difference between the formula and the money purchase, which means you would get the formula benefit as your benefit for that month. Now, keep in mind, there's taxes you're going to be paying on that. So you still have to pay taxes, but that's the amount that you would get. And it is always based on the higher amount. I have never heard of anything that is not based on the higher amount. Okay. All right. Now, this is the part that sometimes gets a little confusing because there's a lot of annuity options that you have to think about. Now, I can tell you that when I go through these, and you need to think about these because it depends on your situation. It depends on where you want to be when you retire. And I cannot give you advice which one to take. ETF will not give you advice. They'll explain them much more in depth than I'm going to do this morning, because we'd be here all day probably if we went through these all in depth. But you have to, become very, very familiar with what each of these options are, and then you make your decision on which option you want. But keep in mind, you cannot outlive your benefit. You will always get one depending on how long you live. Okay, so here we go. The first option is the annuitant's life only. So let's say you retire this this year, in 2023, and you live, I'll do the, the worst case scenario. You live 10 years and then you pass away. It's done. Your annuity payout is done. There is nothing for your beneficiaries. It is only for your life. The second one is life or 60 payments. Now, 60 payments, if my math is correct, is like 5 years. So let's say you retire at 57, add 5 years onto that. You'll keep getting it. If you should pass away before that 60-month payment is due, then your beneficiaries will get the remainder of what, when you pass away, up to the 60 months. So that's where the or 60-month payment guarantee comes in, which gives them something for your beneficiaries. Same applies to the life for 180. 180, I believe, is 15 years. So if you retire at 57, add 15 years to that. If you die before those 15 years are up, your beneficiary gets the remainder of that 180 payment. So these two kind of are built in for something for your beneficiaries, if that's what you want. Now, the other thing with these options to keep in mind is you have 60 days from the time that you get your first annuity payment if you want to change them. After 60 days, you can't change it anymore. So if you start out and take the life for 60 payments, and then, 90 days later, you say, oh, I want to do life or 180, you can't, because you're beyond the 60 days. So when you get your first annuity payment, 60 days from that date, you still can change your option if you want. After that, you cannot. All right. This next one is with a named survivor option. Now, with a named survivor option, this is one person that you designate to be your named survivor. Now, in most cases, people who are working will pick their husband or their spouse. If it's a man, a woman, if it's a man, it'll be his wife. Most of them with the named survivors are the spouse. Not always. It can be a relative. It could be a friend. It could be whatever. But keep in mind, once you name that person, you cannot change it. The only time it can be changed is if it's a husband and wife and there's a divorce. A judge can change it. Other than that, you can't. So this one you really need to think about if this is what you want. Now, most times when you have a husband and wife, the most popular one is the one at the bottom, 100% continue to the named survivor with 180 payment guarantee. So again, you have the three options at the top. And then with your named survivor, the person is really a co-owner of your pension. So for example, if you took the 75% continue to name survivor, when you die, if you pick that one, then 75% of your monthly payments would go to your named survivor, or the 100% or the whatever. Now, the other thing that, unless they've changed it recently that I'm not aware of, is if your named survivor dies before you do, you cannot name another one. Okay. So keep that in mind also. And that's why this one really takes some time. I mean, you got to think about this one if you want, because you're really having someone else who owns that pension with you while you're living. And then depending on which option you take, that, that you go with it. Now, the other thing that comes into play here with the named survivor, IRS has also put some stipulations on this. Depending on which option you take, there are some age differences that you got to be careful of, really careful of. If you take, for example, the 75% or the reduced 25%, there cannot be more than a 19-year difference between you and your named survivor. If there's more than that, ETF will say, can't do it. So be careful. If you take the 100%, either of the 100%, that there's a 10-year difference between you and your survivor. You can't have, it can't be more than 10 years younger. So IRS comes into play here. I would be willing to bet that when this was put into place, that people probably were thinking, well, this would be a good way to put grandchildren in. You can't do that if your grandchildren are outside of these age restrictions. So that didn't work. And obviously we know the IRS wants to get their money no matter how they can get it. So, you put in the stipulation and you got to live with it. So there's a lot here that you need to think about. And this is an area that I would strongly suggest if you're interested in. There is a booklet out there that does talk about the annuity options that goes into this in much more detail. So again, visiting the ETF website and looking at the resources there will really help you a great deal. Okay. All right. Now, there's another option, and this is pretty popular to single people. And this is called the accelerated option. So what ETF will do, let's say, you have your regular options, but let's say you retire at 57 and you want to take the accelerated option, you can, because what ETF will do is they make an assumption that you're going to take your Social Security at age 62. Now, you may not want to take it at 62, but they make that assumption. So what they will do is between age 57 and when you hit 62, they will prepay, so to speak, money into your account as if you were getting Social Security at 57. So you can see in the first column in red how much your annuity would go up because if you're in the accelerated portion. Now, the negative part of this is when you hit age 62, that's gone. So then you're going to lose money because that acceleration is not there anymore, because they assume you're going to be getting Social Security then at age 62. It's your choice if you want to take that or not. But like I said, it does give you that money up front and really overpays you at the beginning. But then when you hit 62, it really kind of underpays you. Okay,
Diane,
yes.
quick question. None of the options that an individual in Wisconsin takes as far as their annuity payment impacts their actual Social Security benefits. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And there is right now, just to let you know too, the pensions are taxed, but there is a bill floating out there for co-sponsorship to exempt the first, I think it's like the first 100,000 that you get, and nobody that I don't know who's getting 100,000 a year in their pension, but anyway, that would not be taxed. I don't know if that's going to see the light of day or not, but it is out there for co-sponsorship. So we're watching it to see what happens with that. Okay. Here again, just as a review, what your beneficiary is, and it can be changed anytime, have any number listed, doesn't have to be a person. And, it could be a charity, an estate, a trust, a school, or whatever you want. A named survivor has to be one person and can't be changed unless it's by a judge. And again, as I said, the H factors come into play. And that is very important because certainly ETF does not want you to get in trouble with the IRS. So they will make sure that they, go through that with you so that you are within the guidelines of what the IRS says. Okay. Okay. Now, if I was in person doing these, the one question I would ask the audience is, do you know if you are in the core fund or if you're in the variable fund? And let me tell you, there's a number of people that know, but there's a great number of people that don't have a clue which fund they're in. Well, if you go to your statement of benefits, section 3 will tell you if you're in just the core or if you're in the core and variable, because there's a column that has money in the core. There's a column that has money in the variable. If there is nothing listed in the variable, you're not in the variable. Okay. The other thing that happens is if for some reason, when you signed your paperwork with ETF, when you became a teacher, if you didn't indicate what you wanted to be, they'll default to the core. Now, the core fund is basically the safer of the two. And the reason is there is what they call a 5-year smoothing period. So if you look back from this year, for example, we all know that the stock market was negative every month. So pensions really take a hit. But with this 5-year smoothing, ETF will look back 5 years, and there have been some very good years in there, like this year, previous year we just came off of was a very good year. They'll take that 5-year smoothing and then smooth out the decrease that would have happened. So really and these are adjusted May 1 every year. This coming May, those in the core are going to see a slight increase, a 1.2 to a 1.6% increase. That'll be determined probably early April, I believe, either end of March or early April. Now, here's the other good thing about the core. Whatever the amount that you get on your first payment, let's say you get $1,800 on your first payment. That amount, it can never go below that. In the good years, the amount will go up. In the bad years, it may come down a little bit. It can never go below what your starting amount was. So you can do some figuring, so to speak, on planning from month to month, because you'll know what it is going to be. And then every May 1st, it may go up in the good years. It may, stay the same in the good years, but you'll always know what that amount is. Now, those that have money in the variable, and I will tell you, ETF will not allow you to have all your money in the variable account, because the variable account is at the will of the stock market. And if you look back, like I said, this past year, it was all negative. It could wipe you out completely. The number I heard was like no more than 10% in the variable. Because of what the endings were this past year, the projection for people that have money in the variable are going to take between a 22 or 21 and 26% decrease. Everything they made this last May is probably wiped out. There is no floor. There is no smoothing with the variable. So be careful, and some people, if you like to gamble, variable might be for you. In the good years, this past year, people got double-digit increases. They got a very good increase. But because it's at the will of the stock market, this one is much riskier from year to year.
Diane, can somebody change that at any time in the year, or is there?
That's the next slide. That's the next slide.
I'm playing your straight man.
So the questions come up. Can I get out of the variable? Yes, you can. You can get out, but once you're out, you're out. You can't get back in. So if it's been a bad year and you want to get out and you say, I want out, but then the next year is good, I want back in, not going to happen. They make those adjustments or those participations on January 1st of every year. If you want to get out, just send them a letter anytime throughout the year, but it won't become effective until the following January. So if you want to make that decision now, you can, but then it won't be effective until January 1 of 24. And this is the form that's on the ETF website that cancels the variable participation.
Is
Diane?
Go ahead, Annalise.
Oh, before she got too far down the road, we have quite a few questions about the options.
Okay.
But the first one is, how do I learn what my bottom line retirement benefit will be?
Okay, good question. On the ETF website, there is a calculator that will give you an estimate of what your amount is going to be. Let's say you're going to retire in a year from now. You know what your salary is now. You can project out what it might be, for another year. You know how many years of service you have. You can add another year of service in there. Run the calculator. It'll give you an estimate. Now, ETF will tell you that it is only an estimate, but I can tell you from personal experience, when I did it, when I retired back in 2011, it was almost spot on. It was very, very close. Now, it may still be somewhat adjusted, but that'll give you a good indication of what you can expect when you retire.
Okay, now we have another one. Is it true that if I do not take my retirement right away, or only an amount that is less than 70,000, I can get free or very low health care or Obamacare?
I believe that's correct, but I would double check with ETF to be sure.
And then if I am 62, but have only 28 years of teaching, do I still get penalized?
Okay, hang on. You're 62 and how many years?
28 years of teaching.
Yes, you will get it'll be a 0.990 based on a 1.00. So you'll get a slight decrease.
And we have another question along the same line. Is there a penalty if you have 30 years, but are 55 years of age?
Yes, you do. It'll be a 0.904.
Okay, this one's, let's see. I began my education career at 47. I won't have 30 years in. Does my benefit amount decrease?
So they started at 47.
Yes.
And how many years will they have when they retire?
Well, I won't have 30 years in.
So if you retire at 57, let's say 10 years, yeah, you're going to have a decrease.
Okay, then this one's a little more specific. Is that 20% taken out if I am 60 or over, but do not have 30 years? I am at 24 years, I think is what they meant.
Okay, if you're 60 and 24 years, it's a 0.952.
Okay,
Yeah.
we still have some more.
Okay, well, just let me tell you, there at the ETF website, there is this booklet called, as I said, Calculating Your Retirement Benefits. The chart that I'm referring, you can't see it, but the chart is in there that tells you, what the figure is for the age reduction. So you can figure, you can look at what your age is, how many years of service you have, and it'll give you what that % reduction is.
Okay. Can you have more than one beneficiary?
Yes, you can have as many as you want.
Okay, I think you need your chart again. What if I only work 10 years, but retire at 66?
Well, guess what? No penalty.
Oh,
Because once you hit 65, it's pretty much no penalty.
okay. So I want to retire at age 56 with 32 years of service. Am I going to have to pay a penalty?
Probably not.
Okay.
But again, that would be a specific question to ETF just to make sure.
Okay.
And we can probably answer many of these offline, specific questions like that to
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Annalise, thank you very much for that. Keep those questions coming. We do record all of the questions in the Q&A transcript, and we can respond individually to you out there. If there's something that applies to the bigger group, we can answer that as well. The one question that I've been seeing quite a bit of, talking about the variable fund. Are you either in or out, or can you change your participation level in the variable fund?
You can change it. You can change it, but if you want to get out completely,
okay,
you can't get back in.
All right, so you can change the participation rate up to what they recommend, but if you want to get out totally, no longer get back in that way.
Right,
okay,
right.
super question.
And then can the named survivor be a child?
If you got to look at that age difference between you and that child.
There may be some specific situations from an IRS perspective if you have a disabled child.
Yes, yes.
So that is one caveat that you want to put in there. And all of these things, and I'm going to stress this from Diane's perspective and from WREA, your situation individually can vary. These are not tax recommendations. These are not suggestions for you. I highly encourage you to talk to a specialist about these things. We'll get all that you can from ETF. And then, depending upon your personal situation, how you need to set your annuity system up, how you need to get your payments, who your beneficiaries are, all of those things, depending upon if you have a special needs child, age differences in spouses, things like that. So we'll show you how you can get more information on that as we move along.
Well, and then the other thing too is if you're getting close to retirement, you can set up an appointment at ETF and go in and talk with a specialist, and all of your individual questions, you can ask and they'll answer them for you, because there are so many variable questions out there that, are specific to your situation, which has to be answered by ETF. Okay. So the question comes up Do I pay taxes on my annuity? Yes, you do. You will get a statement from ETF by the end of January, once you retire, just like you do now from teaching, and it'll tell you how much is taken out for state, how much is taken out for federal. If after you retire and you file your first IRS, forms, and you find that there's not enough being taken out, you can do a form again on the ETF website that'll adjust the amount that you want them to take out for federal and state taxes. So again, you can go in and they'll, you just have to fill out the form, tell them how much more you want to take out, and then they will do that. There is also an ETF tax calculator that, again, you can run to calculate your taxes. Again, that'll be an estimate, but it'll get you pretty close. And also remember, no Social Security, Medicare, or any other deductions come off of your annuity. Okay, so that's an important thing to see also when you do it. So the big question is, can I go back to work after I retire? And I have to answer this question both ways, yes and no. Once you retire from teaching, for example, and let's say you retire at 57 and you realize, well, I don't want to sit around. I want to do something. I want to work. You can go back to an employer that does not participate in the WRS, and you can work full-time. You can get a paycheck. It will not affect your pension. However, if you want to go back to, as we call, a rehired annuitant, so if you retire from a school district and you want to go back and sub or teach, then there are some regulations in place as of right now. There needs to be, and this is by IRS law, that requires a good faith termination. In other words, once you retire or prior to you retiring, you cannot make any kind of an agreement with your employer that says, I'll come back and work after I retire. That's illegal. You can't do that. There has to be a break in service of at least 75 calendar days before you go back. Now, if you want to go back, you can work up to 2/3 of full time. If you go over that 2/3, you're putting your pension in jeopardy of being suspended. You can substitute up to a certain number of hours. That also comes into this. So yes, you can go back to work, but be careful. Now, every HR department is aware of these regulations, so they're not going to put you in any kind of jeopardy. But it does, IRS has their hand in this. Now, the legislature has had some bills the last couple of bienniums that want to change the number of days of service, of break in service. I've seen some that are as low as 15 days that break in service from 75. IRS probably will not allow that because that's not a true termination or a good faith termination. There's also some legislation that I've seen out there that wants to change the pension to allow people to go back and work like substitutes or work whatever and still get their pension. That could be problematic depending on, what that is. And I understand the shortage of teachers. I get it. It is very, very concerning, but there's other solutions to this than on the backs of retirees. And I can tell you with, when I do these in person and I do ask this question, if the law was changed to allow you to go back to work and still get your pension, would you do it? And I can tell you the number of hands that go up, I could probably count on one hand. People do not want, they retire for a reason. There are some that'll go back, granted. Will they go back in large numbers? I don't believe that'll happen. So this is very critical, that you make sure you follow these rules. And we monitor the legislation. So if anything does come up that changes, obviously you will be notified by ETF. But right now, this is what the law is currently.
Diane, we've had some questions before the webinar that have asked about the pros and cons of not necessarily retiring, but say mid-year reducing their hours to part-time. Does that impact their years of service that they can earn and things like that?
It will. If they go from full-time to part-time, like middle of the year, the part-time work is counted, but it's counted as part-time. So it will affect their total number of years. Instead of working the full year, it would just be, let's say it's half of the year.
Right.
It would be at 50% instead of at the 100%.
So they have to work 2 half years for every
Yeah, to
1
make
year
up for a
credit.
year. Yeah.
But it would
Yeah.
still go back and pick up the 3 highest earned years
Yes,
as far as the
yes,
formula. Perfect.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Super. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So here's the contact information that I said, here's my contact information that you can get a hold of me, the Department of Employee Trust Funds, who is ETF, and I would suggest become really good friends with that website. There's a ton of material on there that really will help you. More than you probably want. There's also a number that you can call that'll get you to the just a general number that'll then be able to direct you to wherever you need to go. Now, the State of Wisconsin Investment Board, which we call SWIB, is the group that invests our money. And they're the group that has done the fantastic job of really, really investing our money well. Now, I also need to tell you, because remember I said earlier that when you're working, you have an account with your name on it. Once you retire, you no longer have an account with your name on it. All of your money is mixed in with all of the rest of the retirees' money. And then that is the money that's invested. And because it's such a large amount of money, they can get better rates and they can get better returns, that better investments that then come back to us, because obviously they do not want to put retirees in any kind of danger of having anything happen to their pension. So they are committed to working with ETF to make sure they get the best they can get for their investments. And they do a fantastic job, really good job on that. And as a matter of fact, there was a webinar a couple of days ago, or a Ways and Means Committee with the legislature that SWIB presented at, and they were getting accolades for it because they've done so well. And we are the number one pension system in the country. And everybody is kind of jealous of us because we do so well, as opposed to our neighbor to the south, which isn't doing. But anyway, and we continue to do well, and will continue to do well, even when the stock market is not doing very well. They are very, very wise in how they do their investments. Well, thank you so much. Any additional questions that I can answer at this time, or?
So there's a couple. Can you return to work full-time at a school district if you are not taking your annuity?
I believe you can, but you better ask ETF.
And then if I am a fall sport coach and retire on June 30th, could I go back and be a volunteer coach for a fall sport that starts August 1? If yes, could I get paid for this position once the 75 days comes from that day forward?
My answer would be yes, you can volunteer and you probably could get paid, but that again is a specific question you might want to run past ETF or someone in your HR department.
And here's one. Once a person retires, does the variable default to core, or does the variable still fluctuate if I've not switched it from variable to core?
It still fluctuates if you haven't switched it, yes. Because once you retire, if you still are in the variable, you're still going to be at the whim of the stock market. Yeah.
Great.
Then just one more. If you participate in the variable fund, does this affect your retirement when it is recalculated?
When it's, what you mean? So on the yearly recalculation, if it goes down, it will affect the variable portion of it will be combined with the core, but it could affect, how much it could go down. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for those questions. Again, keep those coming into Q&A. We can respond to those via transcript and via email afterwards. The good news is you don't have to go this alone. WREA and Association Member Benefits Advisors are a partner with WREA. We hold these webinars. We do individual counseling. We do individual benefit review. And one of the things that we've done is we've asked WRA members, people who have already gone before you and retired, about getting involved, how they get involved, what WREA does on their behalf. And so many of them have told us, and the next couple of slides will show you, talking about the importance of WREA and how the local chapters all across the state of Wisconsin are so important to protecting your pension and being an advocate to make sure that your pension stays number one in the country. I live in Texas. My wife, my daughter-in-law, my daughter, son-in-law, or not my son-in-law, my brother-in-law, and his wife are all educators. they would kill to have the pension that you have in Wisconsin, and what WREA has done to protect that as well. So we're going to walk through just a few things real quickly about your benefits being with WREA, and being involved in the local chapter. As you're looking to retire, it's important to understand that there's a community here for you now, but there will be a community for you after you walk out of that schoolhouse. They're a friendly group. They are not WEAC or WEAC. This is Wisconsin Retired Educators Association. They want to help you understand what it's like to be a retiree financially, socially, how they get involved, how they stay together and take care of each other, and continue to be lifelong learners and benefit retirees, and more importantly, support those public employees, public education employees that take care of our kids as well. So here's what we asked them. We asked them, what does an active teacher need to know before they retire? And they told us, know your savings sources and how those can change. So it's not only what you're putting into your pension plan, but also how you can save 403B and how that may need to change as you get closer to retirement. Understand those benefits, talking about Medicare, healthcare, all those things before and after you turn 65. Just as you've done today, start to understand how your pension plan works. You have a great pension system, but there are some steps you need to take along the way to make sure that you get the most out of your pension system, and start planning that long before you decide to pull the trigger and retire that way as well. Talking about budgeting, as you're moving out into your pension years, pension and Social Security, how to live on a fixed budget. But most importantly, they said, get your house in order before you retire. Those are so important because after you retire, sometimes it's things you can't go back and fix once you've made your selections. And Diane did a great job of presenting that in terms of, how you select your annuity payout. If your situation changes, you can't always change and call and say, hey, double up my pension system payment, that type of thing. And then here's some other things they say about on the social side. Start to build your network with other education retirees. You've gone to the same schoolhouse for 40 years, like in Diane's case. You change, your thought processes change once you leave there. How to stay involved and how to keep connected to your community, and how to keep learning, especially about your retirement, and how to get involved to take care of these things, and how to leverage your time and learn to say yes and no, and feel comfortable in saying that as you go into your retirement years. Talk about finding out how to live your passions out and stay active in your community, and how to recreate yourself now that you're out of that classroom. This is some of the social aspects that WREA can help you out with as you leave the schoolhouse. Now, Diane touched on this at the very beginning. WREA is first and foremost out there to protect your biggest asset. That's your pension. And your pension is there and is number one for a reason, because groups like WREA, retired educators, are supporting that, preserving how you receive your healthcare benefits, keeping you connected to your local community. And on top of that, bringing benefits and discounts and other things into your opportunity realm that you may have lost whenever you left the schoolhouse. To become a member of WREA, you don't have to be retired. We highly encourage you to become a member now, so that whenever you roll right into retirement, you're already a member. There's no breaks in that. For regular members, active retirees, $60 a year for that. There are 3-year and lifetime options available. For associate members who are not yet retired, maybe spouses, things like that, is only $40 a year. And you'll hear this over and over from Diane, from Annalise, from MJ, and others. This is the small investment to protect your biggest asset. Diane showed you that you've got an asset that you've worked for all your career, that's never going to outlive you. You are going to always have that benefit, no matter how long you live, in that pension. Protecting that and making sure that the forces outside that want to convert it to a defined contribution plan, or want to convert it to strictly a 401k type plan, those type of things where you could run out of money, that's what WREA fights against, to make sure that funding is there. She talked about your friends just to the south of you down in Illinois, funding issues in terms of their pension, those type of things. WREA has fought to maintain the funding, and you're at 105, 106, 107. That's phenomenal. Most state plans are 80% or less. And you can't even talk about getting a cost of living adjustment or anything else until you get over 80. So again, what WREA has done on your behalf and what you want to continue to support your pension is to fight to make sure that funding level's there and the investments are conservative enough that you don't lose, but that they are substantial enough to continue to gain and keep those COLA levels growing as well. Now, we've talked a lot about WREA. I want to talk just briefly about our partnership. I work with Association Member Benefits Advisors. Our leader up in Wisconsin is MJ Woodall, who's here with us on today. We work with associations just like WREA all across the country, retired educators, active and retired state employee groups, firefighters, police officers, nurses, public servants. Our goal is to help bring more members to the association, to keep your pension strong, and to provide benefits, supplemental benefits that you may have lost when you left the schoolhouse, or you may need for your parents or your children who have aged out. And that's what MJ and her team do in Wisconsin to take care of you in that regards. Some of these benefits will fill gaps that aren't covered by your state or your district benefits. They're portable whenever you leave the schoolhouse, or if you decide to leave Wisconsin because it's too cold and you want to come down to the South and warm up for a while, you can take these benefits with you wherever you go. You can extend benefits to your parents, meaning if you're responsible for your parents' care or they need care, different benefits, you can get benefits through WREA for them or for your adult children who may have aged out of your benefits from school. And we have so many retirees who retire at a young age in their mid-50s or early 60s and will go work another job, but they still have responsibility if their elderly parent were to fall ill. They would have to take off time from that job and that income earning opportunity. With proper planning, your benefits through WREA can help prepare you for your parents, for yourself, for your children as well. One of the things that Diane talked about at the very beginning, if you'll remember back, she talked about you've got a pension plan that you're contributing to, that the school district's contributing to. You probably have an option through a 403B, a deferred savings plan that takes out money out of your paycheck every month, puts it into a stock market plan that is tax deferred. And whenever you're ready to retire, it's a supplement to your pension. Well, as you all know, the stock market has bumped up and down the past several years. Last year, it dropped 20-something%. As you're getting closer to retirement, if you have a 403B plan, you need to think about, what do I want to do with this to protect that money? Because whenever you leave, you can't contribute more money to that 403B plan. You need to make sure that you've got it there to secure your retirement. The good news is WREA has a tax-deferred asset protection plan that assures that you'll never run out of money, and you can use this for your 403B plan. We get a lot of people who ask questions about that. Most people aren't concerned about dying, but they're mostly concerned about outliving their money. Good news is you've got, on one hand, you've got your pension. You'll never outlive that. Now you've got to supplement that pension with your 403B plan, your nest egg savings, something that you've done there. This tax-deferred asset protection plan through WREA allows you to have lifetime income and safety. You get competitive returns with no downside risk in the stock market. You only get gains. If a year that, like we had last year, where it was a 22% loss, you don't lose any money. So unlike what you lost in your 403B or possibly in your variable account, you would not lose any money in this plan. You only get gains on top of that. The thing that I like about this plan is it doesn't matter what your health is. It doesn't matter what your situation is. You can put 403B money in there. You can have a plan if you just got a savings or inheritance that you received, you can put it in a type of plan as well. But what I best like, and MJ and I have done this, is I like the long-term care benefits in there. Because to me, it never makes any sense to me to work all of your career taking care of our kids. You retire and then you have a health issue or just a declining condition that requires someone else to just make a decision on how you're taken care of, either in a nursing home or something like that. With this plan, you can have long-term care benefits that increase your payouts, that make sure that you're taken care of in the manner that you want to have that as well. Because we've got to prepare for a lot of years of living. The good news is, once we reach age 65, chances of you living to age 80 and 90, especially for women, is great. So you've got to make sure that you have your pension in there. You've got to protect for inflation, health changes that happen to your lifestyle, those type of things. you've got to prepare for that. WREA is here to help you do that. So we want to make sure that you're available and aware of what is available to you. So what I want to do, a couple of things for you. Keep those questions coming into Q&A. We're going to respond back to you on the transcript individually. If you have a specific question as well, and you want to know about WREA membership, if you want to know about the benefits of being a member of WREA, take your smartphone, open up your camera, just like we do in the in restaurants and QR codes, hover over that QR code with your camera. Don't take a picture of it, just hover over it, a little form will pop up, and you can simply say, I want a benefit review, or I want to find out about a tax-deferred asset protection plan or long-term care, or you can put in the comments, I just want to become a member, or tell me how these benefits work whenever I retire. MJ and her team can get back to you and help you. They are experts and pros in not only your pension system, but how Social Security works with that, how Medicare works with that, how all those things work together. I highly encourage you, especially for that 24% of you on this call today that are retiring here in about 4 months, 5 months, congratulations, to use that QR code and find out how you can work all of the different systems together and what it works for you. So if you're on your smartphone or you're on a tablet and you can't use the QR code, you can simply email me down there at john.green@amba.info, jon.green@amba.info. So Diane, Annalise, thank you so much today. MJ, was there anything that you saw that was common in the questions that maybe we need to get Diane before she heads off today?
I think there was a question about the 403B. At what age can you start taking your 403B?
Okay. You want to answer that?
Of course, I can't remember because I know they changed it during COVID. Is it 72, 71 and a half?
You got a couple of different issues with that.
I think so.
You can take your 403B out without tax penalty at 59 and a half.
Okay.
Okay. So you can start to withdraw on your 403B at 59 and a half without tax penalty. Everything that you take out is taxed because you've put it away tax deferred. But if you don't, and you push it back, meaning you don't withdraw on it, or you convert it to an asset protection plan that can't lose money so that you've always got no concerns about that and you have peace of mind, you can wait until you are age 73 starting next year. So the government has pushed it back due to COVID. Diane was right on the spot on that. What was required was called a required minimum distribution. The government says, you can't hold on to that tax deferred money forever, but it used to be 70 and a half. It got pushed back in 2020 to 72 when COVID hit, and they moved it back to 73. Ultimately, we'll get to 75. That's good news for those of you who may have lost a lot of money in there and you want to try to gain it back without having to start paying taxes on it and distributions on it, things like that. So again, I highly encourage you, use that QR code, find out how all these things work together. You have a phenomenal retirement system in Wisconsin. When you think about retirement being a three-legged stool, you've got two really good legs of your stool are stable. That's your pension system and Social Security. That's the good news. That third leg of a stool, if you ever sat on a three-legged stool, can get wobbly when you think about your own personal savings, your nest egg, those type of things. So we want to make sure that you have a stable retirement. WREA wants to make sure that, AMBA does. So help protect your pension and your Social Security by being a member of WREA, and take advantage of the benefits to stabilize that third leg of your benefits of your retirement stool with your benefits through WREA as well. So thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us on a cold Saturday morning. We do record this. We'll send out not only the slides to everyone, but we'll make the recording available on WREA.net. WREA.net. That recording will be out there so that you can refer to this as well. So ladies, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. We ran a little bit longer, but thank you for all these great questions. Again, if you ask a question in the transcript, we'll make that available as well too. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your weekend. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.